Ukraine's air power is about to get a serious boost. French Mirage 2000 five jets, known for their speed and versatility, are on their way to Ukraine. Promised by French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu, the first batch is set to arrive by early 2025. So what makes these jets so special, and how will they change the game for Ukraine? These aren't just any jets. They're custom-tailored to fit the challenges of Ukraine's battlefield. But why the wait? From specialized pilot training to high-tech upgrades, there's more to this delivery than meets the eye. And in a war where every piece of equipment counts, these jets could be a game-changer. 3 key ways the Mirages might turn the tide: air defense, precision strikes, and deep attacks inside Russian territory. But before diving into these roles, let's get into what makes the Mirage such a legendary jet. The Mirage family of aircraft, manufactured by French defense industry giant Dassault, is arguably one of the best-known names in French military hardware, particularly for those following military matters in the second half of the 20th century. From the early 1960s through to the early 2000s, the backbone of the French Air Force was the Mirage family of aircraft, specifically various iterations of the Mirage 3, which was replaced by the Mirage 2000 in the early 1990s. The Mirage 2000 first took to the air in 1978 and became the backbone of the French Air Force from 1984 to the early 2000s. It also scored significant export success. Over the years, more than 600 of the different variations were produced, with over 50% of them exported to Brazil, Egypt, Greece, India, Peru, Qatar, Taiwan, and the United Arab Emirates. Compared to previous Mirage iterations, the first generation of Mirage 2000s featured marked advances in structure, aerodynamics, propulsion, and systems. The export-optimized multi-role combat aircraft Mirage 2005 was introduced in 1990 as the first of the second generation of the Mirage 2000 range. The Mirage family of aircraft was designed with CCV technology that offered instant response to pilot input by utilizing fly-by-wire or FBW technology to control its flight surfaces. In a CCV or control-configured vehicle, the pilot's inputs are electronically transmitted to the flight control surfaces, replacing traditional mechanical linkages. Needless to say, this improves stability and maneuverability, reduces pilot workload and error by automating certain processes, and therefore improves safety. Not that impressive by today's standards perhaps, but cutting-edge technology back then. It retained the delta wing, characterizing all Mirages since the first 1950s prototypes, which provided considerable lift, low drag, and plenty of internal volume for fuel and avionics. But it also featured movable surfaces that could be continuously adjusted to give exactly the required trajectory. The aircraft's computer-based flight controls also ensured that it was more agile, handled better at lower speed, and was able to land at a more manageable velocity. In keeping with the original Mirage ethos of flexibility and adaptability on the assembly line, over the years multiple variants of the 2000 have appeared, but they all share roughly the same basic specs. The jet stands 47 feet long, with a wingspan a shade under 30 feet, and has a combat weight of 21,000 pounds. The Snecma M53P2 engines give it a maximum thrust of 98 kilonewtons and the ability to carry a weight of up to 38,500 pounds at takeoff. It can reach Mach 2.2 in full flight and has an operational ceiling of 60,000 feet and a fixed probe for in-flight refueling. The main model used by the French Air Force was the 2000C, which was upgraded to the 2000D in the early 1990s. The 2000C featured a broader chord tail fin and trailing edge root fairing in its initial production form. The thrust was boosted to 19,842 pounds thanks to the new M53-5 engine. In addition to the single-seat fighter model, a 2-seat Mirage 2000B conversion trainer was also developed. The 2000D also has 2 crew members, namely a pilot and a navigation and weapons officer. It also features a fly-by-wire system, 2 inertial navigation systems, Thompson CSF Antelope 5 terrain-following radar, Ikara digital maps, integrated GPS, integrated countermeasures, and a laser designation pod with a thermal camera, or PDL-CT. In terms of firepower, in addition to the 2 GIAT DEFA 554 30mm cannons, the planes can carry air-to-air missiles like the Mica, Magic II, Super 530F, and Super 530D Skyflash, the BGL 1000, BM 400, and BAP 100 air-to-ground bombs, and a variety of air-to-air missiles including the MBDA BGL 1000 laser-guided bomb, MBDA AS-30L, MBDA Armat anti-radar missile, MBDA AM-39 Exocet anti-ship missile, MBDA Apache standoff weapon, and the stealthy cruise missile Scalp. Quite impressive for 30-year-old tech. There's also a Mirage 2000 version equipped for nuclear strikes, the 2000N, of which a total of 75 were produced for the French Air Force. Based on the 2000B, it featured an airframe that was strengthened for low-level operations and was equipped with attack avionics based around the Antelope 5 radar. Its primary weapon was the ASMP standoff nuclear missile, later upgraded to the ASMPA. Fortunately, none of those have ever needed to be fired in battle, but all of these versions were just the first generation. As mentioned earlier, the Mirage 2005s that are being donated to Ukraine by France were the first of the second generation of this remarkable dynasty of aircraft. One of the main upgrades to the Mirage 2005 was the inclusion of the Thales RDY multimode radar, RDY being short for Radar Doppler Model Y, or Radar Doppler Multi-Target. This radar provides multi-targeting capability in the air defense role and has a look-down, shoot-down mode of operation. It can simultaneously detect up to 24 targets and carry out tracking while scanning on the 8 highest priority threats. It was further complemented by a modernized cockpit, which features hands-on throttle and stick, or HOTAS, control. The cockpit also incorporates the Thales VEH3020 heads-up display and 5 cathode ray tube multifunction Advanced Pilot System Interface (APSI) displays. The self-defense suite also received a makeover, with the ICMS Mark II automated integrated countermeasure system from Thales. This system incorporates a receiver and associated signal processing system in the nose section for the detection of missile command data links. The aircraft is powered by a single Safran Snecma M53P2 turbofan engine rated at 14,500 pounds of dry thrust and 21,400 pounds in afterburner. Operating with only internal fuel, it has an operational range of close to 1,000 miles, but it also carries external fuel tanks that double the effective combat radius. In terms of firepower, it has 9 hardpoints for carrying weapon system payloads, 5 on the fuselage and 2 on each wing. These points carry 4 Mica missiles, 2 Magic missiles, and 3 drop tanks simultaneously. Optionally, the MBDA Super 530D missile or the MBDA Skyflash air-to-air missile can be fired as an alternative to the Mica. The drop tanks can carry the same range of ordnance as the earlier models of the Mirage 2000, described a bit earlier. And as they have been so many times before, the Mirage 2005s being provided to Ukraine are being modified once again before delivery. Enhancements include systems for air-ground combat and electronic warfare, according to Le Cornu. So how could these Mirages make a difference to Ukraine? Well, for starters, that depends on how many Ukraine receives and when. Only 37 were ever made for the French Air Force. Since it's in the process of retiring them all to be replaced with the new 5th-generation Dassault Rafale jets, Ukraine could conceivably get all of them. Ideally, they'd need at least 20 to make a full squadron. But at the same time, the French might want to hang on to their full squadron until all the replacement Rafales are ready for delivery. That would leave up to 17 available to give to Ukraine. We mentioned earlier there were 3 ways that Ukraine could make very good use of the Mirages, and the number of planes they have available will be a factor in how best to make use of them. It's likely that the fewer the Ukrainian Air Force has, the more they will be used defensively, to bolster air defense especially. And even more specifically, they'll likely be used in conjunction with another recent top-line piece of military aid donated to Ukraine from Sweden. Included in the latest package of Swedish aid were 2 Saab 340 early warning and control aircraft, also designated as the ASC-890. This is an advanced airborne surveillance and control aircraft developed to enhance air defense capabilities against aerial and maritime threats. It's equipped with sophisticated radar and sensor systems that provide deep situational awareness and long-range target identification at an estimated 350 to 450 miles. These aircraft are a huge boost to Ukraine's ability to detect incoming threats from both land and sea at greater distances, but they're also vulnerable. 3 Russian aircraft types that could threaten the Saab 340s are the MiG-31BM, the Su-35S, and the Su-30SM, all of which carry the R-37M AAM air-to-air missile, which has an engagement envelope of about 100 miles. The missile's active homing seeker is an advanced and enlarged diameter variant of the MNI AGAT 9B1103M, nicknamed the Shaiba, which is Russian for hockey puck due to its internal antenna array being approximately the same size. The Mirage would be a logical fit for the escort mission to support these airborne control platforms. After all, it was used to good effect in a similar role in Kosovo and Bosnia. There it was employed as a high-altitude escort for ISR, or intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance platforms, due to the effectiveness of the active radar homing variant of the Mica AAM. Having the combination of the Mirage 2005's RDY radar and the Mica RF-EM AAM will potentially make the French aircraft the primary air-to-air and air defense platform for the Ukrainian Air Force. If the Mirages can be data linked to the Saab 340s, it would provide the fighter with a longer-range airspace picture and targeting data, which could aid in both keeping the Saab 340 safe and providing greater ISR across the board. Air defense is an area that's been singled out of late by both Zelensky and providers of military aid as an area where Ukraine needs urgent assistance, with the Russians launching swarms of up to 300 Geran kamikaze drones daily all over Ukraine, sending FAB glide bombs smashing down with impunity on both buildings on the front line and in cities like Odessa and Poltava, and German newspaper Bild's military expert Julian Ropke reporting that Ukraine has 5 to 6 Patriot systems left. One can understand the urgency. So it's easy to understand how useful the Mirage may be in this context. But Russia isn't the only one launching glide bombs or conducting long-range strikes into enemy territory. As we mentioned at the beginning of the video, those are the two other ways that Ukraine will be hoping to use the Mirages to the deadliest effect, particularly if there are enough of them. At the moment, Ukraine has a dedicated bomber brigade, the 7th Tactical Aviation Brigade. It's likely that a new brigade will be formed to handle the Mirages, rather than adding them to the 7th Tactical Aviation Brigade. Why? Well, there are two reasons. First, integrating a completely new type of aircraft into an air force isn't without its complications and costs. The addition of a second high-performance fighter aircraft is, in theory, a continuation of the current high-low mix of the Sukhoi Su-27 and the Mikoyan MiG-29 planes maintained within the Ukrainian Air Force. However, whereas these two Soviet-era aircraft were designed and built from a common set of onboard systems and a single industrial base, combining a US and French-designed fighter in the same force presents complications. One issue is where to base them. Although technically inferior to both the F-16 and Mirage 2005 in many respects, the Russian-made planes are capable of using more rugged runways than the foreign jets. So not all of Ukraine's airfields are suitable for basing or deploying the Mirage. There would likely need to be substantial work done building reinforced hangars and associated facilities to store them, and additional air defenses deployed around them to fight off Russian attempts to hit them. That's expensive, another major consideration with respect to the deployment of a new type of aircraft. Given the many differences between operating and maintaining the Russian planes, the F-16s, and now the Mirages, 3 different sets of trained personnel, parts, equipment, and materials will be required. This is bound to stretch already limited military spending budgets, despite substantial assistance from Western donors and partners. That's if a substantial enough contingent of ground crew and maintenance personnel can be sourced. There are 9 nations within NATO that have recently operated or still do operate the F-16, meaning there is a steady supply of both instructor pilots and specialists needed to train ground crew and maintenance personnel. But the NATO countries that have servicemen or contractors who could prepare pilots and mechanics to support the Mirage 2000 or provide their own to handle these tasks on the ground themselves are limited to Greece and France itself. Greece, like France, is busy upgrading its air force from the Mirages to the Rafales. On the one hand, they will probably need most of their Mirage crews until the upgrades are complete. On the other, down the line, it is conceivable that Greece may be willing to donate its replaced Mirages to Ukraine, along with some or all of its personnel. The second complication is that the 7th Tactical is already bursting at the seams. Before the arrival of the new bombers, Ukraine's bomber fleet was comprised of 1970s vintage Su-24s. When the war started, it only had around a dozen still in service. However, at least 18 have been shot down, mostly in the early stages of the war before the bombers shifted to strikes with long-range munitions. So why do they still have so many aircraft? It's because Ukraine and its partners, particularly the US, have done an excellent job of sourcing and acquiring Su-24s from elsewhere and restoring old Su-24 airframes to a flight-worthy condition. In a February 2024 interview, Colonel Yevgen Bulatsi, the 7th Tactical Aviation Brigade's commander, said that the brigade has much more now than it did in February 2022, more bombers and more crews. So adding a whole new ecosystem to handle Mirages to the same brigade might cause all manner of complications, which are probably best avoided by keeping the two fleets separate and in separate brigades. Where the numbers make sense, this is generally the way air forces containing multiple different fleets of aircraft prefer to operate. But whether the Mirages get their own brigade or join the 7th Tactical Aviation, one of their primary roles is going to be launching bombs, and glide bombs in particular. So far, glide bombs have been one of Russia's most successful innovations on the battlefield. These are basically regular Soviet-era Fab 500M62 500-kilogram gravity bombs that Russia has in vast quantities. Russia's modified them, adding wings, a Universal Gliding and Correction Module, or UGCM, and then dropped them from Russian jets near the front line. As a result of this modification, a simple bomb that only costs between $20,000 to $30,000 becomes a cheap substitute for an expensive guided missile, and sometimes an improvement. A Caliber cruise missile carrying a 450-kilogram warhead at a distance of over 900 miles is worth nearly $6.5 million, while the smallest FABs carry a warhead of around 850 pounds. The biggest FAB bombs in Russia's stockpile, the FAB 1500 and FAB 3000, carry an even bigger payload of 3,300 and 6,600 pounds respectively. Russia has also converted the Drel cluster munition carrying gravity bomb into a glide bomb. Because they're not guided missiles per se, Ukraine's electronic warfare or EW countermeasures have had very limited success against these glide bombs to date. Ukraine has also been supplied with several glide bombs, but to date, Russia's more sophisticated EW has severely limited its effectiveness. The Ground-Launched Small Diameter Bomb, or GLSDB, produced by Boeing in the US, has small wings that extend its range to around 100 miles. It's comprised of the GBU-39 Small Diameter Bomb, or SDB, and the M26 rocket motor, both of which are common in US inventories and relatively inexpensive. However, Russian jamming targeting its navigation system has rendered these bombs largely ineffective. There are some indications that Ukraine has also received the JDAM-ER, or Joint Direct Attack Munition Extended Range kit, a glide bomb variant of the JDAM. This kit triples the range of JDAM bombs to over 45 miles and is designed to be modular, allowing for easy installation and upgrade of components such as laser sensors or GPS jamming immunity. Also useful is the relatively low cost, at around $40,000 each. However, the combination of GPS and INS guidance that it uses has left it vulnerable to the same Russian jamming techniques. Ukraine has fared better against Russian EW with the French-supplied Hammer glide bombs, also known as the AASM, or Armament Air Sol Modulaire, highly agile modular munition extended range. The REC, or rocket-assisted tail, gives these bombs a standoff range of around 43 miles, similar to the JDAM-ER. But the problem here is not with performance, but quantity. France has pledged to supply 50 hammers per month, in comparison to the estimated 3,000 FABs that Russia drops monthly. It's just nowhere near enough to make as meaningful an impact. As a result of these limitations, both Ukraine and its partners are in the process of developing new types of glide bombs that can thwart Russian jamming and give Ukraine the same destructive potential as Russia that these high-tech, low-tech weapons provide. In July 2024, the US announced that it was developing a new, cheap, low-tech, long-range glide bomb. The Extended Range Attack Munition, or ERAM, aims to be a low-cost, quick-to-produce air-launched missile with a range of around 285 miles, a 500-pound fragmentation warhead, a hit accuracy within 30 feet of a target, and the ability to operate GPS effectively, even under enemy electronic countermeasures. However, production of the ERAM is still some ways off, with the contracts for their production still seemingly at the bidding stage. The manufacture of the weapon is intended to begin no later than 2 years after the contract is awarded, with a production target of up to 1,000 units per year. In the meantime, Ukraine is developing its own glide bombs. Air Force Brigadier General Serhiy Holibotsov announced back in June 2024 that the service was developing a new glide and guidance kit to transform Soviet vintage unguided bombs into precise munitions. And in early September 2024, a prototype was spotted under a Ukrainian Su-27. With its wings and tail-mounted rocket booster, the presumably GPS-guided bomb looks a lot like a hammer and may actually have been copied from the French glide bomb. If Ukraine can establish local production of the new bomb, it might begin to catch up to Russia's own glide bombing campaign. More importantly, perhaps, in building its own precision munitions, Ukraine frees itself from total reliance on sometimes fickle allies for key military capabilities. That's especially pertinent when it comes to the third way in which the Mirages are expected to be used by Ukraine, the most devastating to Russia, the most controversial, and the most up-in-the-air method. We're talking about carrying out long-distance strikes deep inside Russia. Russia seems to have a problem coping with low-flying drone attacks that are hitting deeper and deeper inside Russia, targeting air bases, oil and ammunition depots, and other key military and logistic infrastructure. These strikes have forced them to move bombers and other equipment even further back into Russian territory, complicating bombing missions and disrupting logistics and supply to the front. Ukraine obviously wants to expand this successful strategy, and the Mirage's ability to carry a wide variety of ordnance that could be used for this purpose, such as the British Storm Shadow and French Scalp missiles, is thus a boon. But so far this plan has met with firm resistance from most of its partners supplying the weapons that could do the most damage in this respect. So far, only Denmark and the Netherlands have given official permission for Ukraine to use the weapons they have supplied for long-range strikes deep inside Russia. Of course, that means the F-16s donated by these nations can, and most likely will, be used for this purpose in the not-too-distant future. However, other key partners like the US, UK and France have refused permission. Although British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is on record as stating he doesn't believe such strikes will make that much of a difference to the war, the main reason for NATO members' reticence to grant permission is a fear of escalation that might draw them into a direct conflict with Russia. It also brings with it the risk of a nuclear war. Russia has allowed several of its so-called red lines to be crossed by Ukraine without the threatened major, even nuclear retaliation. But when it comes to long-range strikes deep inside Russia, it's taken its firmest stance yet. In September 2024, Russia updated its nuclear doctrine to state that, in essence, any attack on Russian territory with weapons that could be capable of carrying nuclear weapons, even if they aren't actually carrying them, would render not just Ukraine liable for a nuclear response, but the nations supplying the weapons too. For now, Ukraine's major weapons suppliers seem unwilling to call Putin's bluff. That leaves Ukraine with the options of either taking a leaf out of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's book and doing whatever it wants anyway, despite protests and outrage from weapon-supplying partners, or making its own. Or perhaps the idea that Ukraine is developing its own long-distance weapons is just a smokescreen to allow NATO weapons with a new coat of yellow and blue paint, so to speak, to be used for deep strikes, while giving Western partners a form of plausible deniability. It remains to be seen how it all pans out, but however it does seem that the arrival of Mirage 2005s in Ukrainian hands will provide them with more air power, more options, and a much-needed morale boost. But what do you think? Will the Mirages make a difference to Ukraine's war effort, or could this move cynically be viewed as just another clearance of old, redundant weaponry to make way for new contracts for the NATO military-industrial complex? Please let us know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you as always for watching. Now go and check out Sweden has had enough of Russia, get out of Ukraine, or click this other video instead.